Okay, we're all settled. Please stand if you are able for the singing of the national anthem and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay, please remain standing and please join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have at least 3 babies here, so please be kind to them. It's feeding time. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tony Taguba, Chairman of the Pan-Pacific American Leaders and Mentors, or PPALM, and welcome to the 2024 10th Annual APAICS Military Leadership Appreciation Luncheon. Please, let's give another round of applause to Army Staff Sergeant Esther Yun Jung Kang for singing the national anthem. She has an operatic voice. So after she retires, she says she wants to go beyond and on New York at for singing at the Metro. Okay. She didn't say that, by the way. I just made that up. APAICS and PPALM share a common value of growing leaders and public service through leadership, development, and mentorship while serving in elected office and also in the armed forces. Our event is held to celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which coincides with the Armed Forces Day celebration on Saturday, May 18th, and also on Memorial Day, May 27th. Our theme this year is our community, our leaders, and our legacy. These words proudly resonate with the achievement and contributions of the hundreds and thousands of Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders who willingly serve our country since the Revolutionary War, and they contributed to the greatness of our country. Public service in our country, be it in elective office or in the military, serves a common purpose to empower our communities with positive presence, representation in our nation. We are delighted to have 3 distinguished guest speakers who will highlight their thoughts on the common purpose to help galvanize our country forward. So more on that later. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our co-host, Ms. Madeline Milkey, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Asia Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, General Taguba, for your service to our country and to our community. I'm Madeline Milka, President and CEO of APAICS, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this year's Military Leadership Appreciation event. We all know public service is a higher calling, and there's no greater calling than to serve in our military. As a daughter of a U.S. Army Special Forces member, a Green Beret, who rests in peace at Arlington National Cemetery, I know firsthand. APAICS was founded in 1994 by former Secretary Norman Y. Mineta and former Representative Robert Underwood from Guam alongside the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, otherwise known as CAPAC. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and that actually happens tomorrow. That is the founding date. Our mission is to build the political pipeline at all levels of government, from community service to elected office. We provide leadership opportunities for AA and NHPIs to better understand the legislative process through our paid internship and paid fellowship programs. Since APAICS's founding, we have placed over 500 fellows and interns in the legislative and executive branches, as well as trained over 1,400 individuals in our leadership academies for those interested in pursuing elected office. For today's event, we are honored to have Congresswoman Jill Takuda, Dr. Ravi Chaudhary, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Installations, Energy, and Environment, and U.S. Army Major J.U. as our featured speakers. We're so excited today to host you as we begin this, or actually we're in the middle of our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so we're excited to host you today with this event as we celebrate also Military Appreciation Awareness Month as well. In partnership with APAICS, in partnership with PPALM, we are excited to be able to keep this continuing legacy of our commitment to our community as we work together, leading the way with Asian American heritage and in public service and in the military. I'm going to take a pause right now because we are also waiting for Congresswoman Jill Takuda to arrive. So please enjoy your conversation with the other guests at your table. Good afternoon. I'm sorry to interrupt your lunch, but I'm proud now I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Congresswoman Jill Takuda, who represents the 2nd District of Hawaii. She serves on the House Committee of the Armed Forces, Agriculture, and Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic. And previously, she served as a senator in the Hawaii State Senate and executive director of the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center. And just recently, she just served as one of the honorary co-chairs for the 30th Anniversary Gala Awards for APAICS last night. So thank you so much, Congresswoman Jill Takuda, for joining us today. Please give her a warm welcome.
All right, aloha everyone. Okay, so I think most of you were there last night, right? So we're all collectively tired. But Madeline, congratulations on an amazing event. I can't imagine, if you ever told me that we would be at this point, over 1,300 participants last night at the gala, you literally have to put us in a convention center, just mind-blowing and very inspiring. I can't wait to see where we're going to be in the years to come. I don't know a bigger venue in DC, though, that we're going to have to take over for the next gala, but looking forward to it. And so I know I'm between you and your main course here, but just wanted to bring some of the AA and HPI on the military side to the discussion. So first and foremost, though, to all of our veterans, our service members in the audience, let's give them a round of applause for being so amazing and protecting our country every single day. Your service, your sacrifice, it is not unnoticed. And so just the deepest mahalo from myself for all that you do. And please know that when I sit on the Armed Services Committee, and it's quite an intimidating committee at times, it is knowing that we sit there representing not just ourselves, not just our districts, but especially for me, and not just during this Heritage Month, we sit there representing our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander service members, their families, and our communities as well. And so I just wanted to touch on a couple of brief things today while I have your attention, and while I was thinking about ANHPI, especially sitting at the gala last night, and thinking about my service on the Armed Services Committee. 3 basic things come to mind. One, we talk a lot about history and heritage. The reality is ANHPI military history is United States military history. We cannot disentangle the two. Our history is our country's history as well. And yet I know we've got some educators in the room. We've got to make sure Yes, right there we've got, yay, thank you, NEA. In the house. We've got to make sure you have the support and the tools to be able to teach our history, our collective history. You know, many of you in this room might know this, but we have literally been fighting and defending this country since the War of 1812. 1812. Filipinos fought side by side General Andrew Jackson in the famed Battle of New Orleans. Chinese Americans fought and died in the Battle of Gettysburg. And of course, very personal to my heart, with family as members, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team was and still is the most decorated unit for its size and length of service in the entirety of United States military history. Not just a few people, that's worth a clap. We have got to make sure that when our AANHPI youth are learning about civics, they're learning about government, when they're learning about military history, the battles and the campaigns fought, that they see themselves. They see the experiences, the contributions that we have made. And while I know we have got excellent, outstanding educators out there making sure that it is taught and it's conveyed, we have to make sure it's not banned. We have to make sure it's not excluded. We have to make sure it's not whited out. That every single child in this country, regardless of their race, their gender, where they come from, where they live, should know our collective history and the contributions we have made to this country through the United States military. So that is one important thing that we have to get across when we leave today. Our history, AANHPI military history, is US history. The second thing, as I thought about that a little bit more, and thinking about even my own, kids and what they're learning and what they have an innate sense of, is the bottom line is I think that AANHPI service members, community members, leaders, we are in the best position to be able to lead and to be a part of any kind of strategic action when it comes to the Pacific century we find ourselves in. I think for many of you, and I see a lot of folks in military uniforms here, there's a lot of talk right now about the Pacific century. There's a lot of talk about China as our pacing threat. But here's the thing, AANHPI to me not only need to be in the room, we need to be at the table when we have these discussions about pacing threats against China, when we talk about our alliances along the first, second, and third island chains as well. I went on a Codel last year, my very first Codel, actually my only Codel so far, officially, that I've been on, but I'll be leading another one soon, through the first island chain. It was for the Armed Services Committee. And we literally went from Hawaii to Guam to the Philippines to Taiwan to Japan to Okinawa. Right? I mean, we hit so many different places. And whenever we got into those briefing rooms that we're not supposed to talk about, and only a few of us can go behind, here's the thing. I was often, if not always, the only AANHPI in the room. The only one. I was definitely by far the only one at the table. And I had a problem with that. Because while, yes, I'm not saying that one person isn't better equipped to understand than the other, but if you're talking about military strategy, you're talking about a community or country and people's willingness to fight, if you're talking about relationships between Asian countries, Pacific Islander countries, and nations as well, how can you not have any one of AANHPI descent at the table? Because I asked the questions about willingness to fight. I asked about historic relationships, the fact that many of them were not always so great. How were they reconciling for that? And I got very classic textbook answers, and nothing against that. But I think there is something that we just understand. There is a cultural competency, if you will, a strategic empathy that many of us have that could bring a different perspective and different lens to, for example, a country's willingness to fight if faced with aggression against China. How people and communities and even militaries will respond to what could be considered non-aggressive actions by us, but aggressive actions to Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders in the region. I do really feel strongly that we are shooting ourselves in the foot. We are leaving behind one of our best assets if we do not make sure that the right individuals with the right cultural competencies and strategic empathies are not there to advise us during a time that is absolutely critical. The difference between aggression, the ability to deter, prevent war, to me, is making sure, and I'm being very biased here, and I'm being very selfish, It's based upon our ability to have AA and HPI service members, advisors in high leadership positions, helping to make these decisions, and not only being in the room, as I said, sitting at the table. We absolutely have to be. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention that is really, really important for us to remember, we want to teach our kids about our collective history. We want to be at the table, helping to lead during this very critical, Pacific century in which we're looking at a pacing threat in China. But we also have to look a little bit in the rearview mirror. We also have to look at how we have treated AA and HPI service members in the military in our history. If we're going to ask them to give the ultimate sacrifice, if we're going to ask them to advise and help us really figure out how we're going to navigate the Indo-Pacific region, then the bottom line is we have to treat our AA and HPI service members with care and respect. And I mention this because if I think about some of the conversations I've had with other members or when I've had with the community, there are times when we haven't exactly done that. Now, we do know that members of the 442, when they came home, were not treated with open arms and welcomed. Many faced racism and discrimination. At the same time, if we think of American Samoans serving in the United States military, they serve, if you know, at a remarkably high rate. Even as challenge persists right now in terms of recruitment on the continent, Samoan youth are enlisting in record numbers. Much of this, yes, has to do with economic opportunity, ability for them to make a life for themselves, but sadly, we also know that American Samoans have died at the highest rates when it came to conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, the highest rate per capita than any troop anywhere in the United States. And yet, despite their service and their ultimate sacrifice, they are considered non-citizen nationals. They're denied the basic rights of citizenships. They can't vote. They've tried, they can't run for office. They can't hold a number of public sector jobs. They can't even rise up to be officers in the military that they serve. So when we think about those who have given themselves, pledged themselves to the military, and the fact that we have denied them some of the basic rights that every other person in uniform is given, to me, that's a wrong that needs to be corrected. That's absolutely something we need to do. If we look even further back, during World War II, 260,000 Filipino and Filipino-American soldiers, as you know, bravely answered the call to serve. And then after the war ended, those promises made for veterans' benefits, for citizenships, were taken away. The Rescission Act of 1946. And you would think, okay, we're a very evolved country. We're going to make good in the decades and the decades to come. We are still fighting for that Fairness Act to pass. And we've got to do something, as every day we see more and more of our World War II Filipino veterans pass away. The dignity that is deserved and should be given to them immediately has not been done. And so when we think about the fact that we're asking them to serve, we need their intelligence, we need their perspective. We want them to see themselves in our military. First and foremost, let's make right on the wrongs. To our World War II Filipino veterans, to American Samoans who are literally begging to serve and being denied the basics of citizenship and service right now. That is something we absolutely have to do and can do in this moment. And I think you heard a lot of it last night, but the third and final point, and I've asked this to some of the top brass in our hearings that have come before me, is anti-Asian hate. I wish I could tell you that it all started with COVID, that our AA and HPI service members experienced racial and ethnic discrimination or harassment in the military. But the reality is, if we look at the last dated report in 2017, and by the way, that's a problem too, the fact that our most recent data is 2017. Because for me, the data you track, the information you seek is your priority. And the fact that this information has not been sought out by our military concerns me, and I have questioned them on that. But back in 2017, 25% of our AA and HPI service members said they had experienced discrimination and harassment as a member of the armed services. This is before COVID. So you can just imagine, we know what we saw happen after COVID in the general community, the rapid, significant increase in AA and HPI hate. So sadly, we can deduce, we can assume that that also tracked in the military. And if already 25% were experiencing ethnic and racial harassment from their fellow service members, it's really going to be concerning to think how many of them suffered even more since that time. And so as I've mentioned time and time again, what we track is what we prioritize. We have got to make sure that we even track broadly. I would love disaggregated data on exactly who has experienced what and their experience in the military service. But right now, as you see, I can't even get new data with us as one big monolithic group. But the data I've seen concerns me and will continue to concern me. And we have got to make sure that for all that we ask our service members to do, all that we ask of our AA and HPI service members and their families to sacrifice, that we've got to do better by them. We've got to make good by the injustices and the disservices of the past. And we've got to make sure that in our quest to ask you to continue to serve, that we treat you well. We make sure that you have the support you needed and you do not stand against discrimination alone. And so I know that's a lot to go after a salad in between a main course. Although I hear it's steak, yeah? So you've got that to look forward to. But again, I just want to go back to really mahaloing all of you for your service, for your sacrifice that you've given, for all the family members of service members who understand what that experience has been about. But just leaving you with this, that if you ask me who is the best position to create a peaceful, more secure world in this country, and I am completely biased, I do think AA and HPI are there to lead the way. So thank you again, and congratulations on a very successful conference and a military luncheon. Mahalo, everyone.
Thank you, Congresswoman Takuda, for your kind remarks and for joining us today. And now I'd like to welcome Tony back to the stage.
Okay, I think you can continue to eat, but just listen to me. I'm just kidding. All right, let's continue with the program. So in partnership with APAICS, PPALM was founded in 2007 to the leadership of General Eric K. Shinzeki, the first Asian American who achieved the rank of 4 stars and the 34th Chief of Staff of the United States Army. And he also served as the Secretary of Veterans Affairs after his retirement. So our principal mission is to provide leadership, development, and mentorship support to AA and HPI leaders and other leaders of color while serving our country's armed forces or in the civilian sector. Like APAICS, mentorship was the key factor in rounding out their professional successes. So we are delighted this afternoon to acknowledge several distinguished guests with us today. One of our very distinguished World War II veteran is able to join us this afternoon. Senior Chief Petty Officer Ray Kabakar, United States Navy. He is a young 96-year-old recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal and also the Bronze Star. He is one of the few AA and HPI World War II living veterans in our country, and to which there are only 2 living World War II veterans here in the Metro DC. And the other one is Mr. Rudy Palagneva, who is suffering from dementia. Sadly, his lovely bride, Carolina, was not able to join us, but they have been married for 70 years this coming November. Shout out. I know he's going to have a huge cake with somebody coming out of the top of it later. And it won't be his wife. All right. That was not in the script, by the way. Of course, we had U.S. Representative Jill Takuda, a member of Congress. I think she's left. She's still here, maybe. Duty calls in Congress. We're also delighted to have Delegate and Deputy Majority Leader Criselda Valderrama, Maryland House of Delegates. She's seated up there, a rising star. And of course, we have the world-famous Dr. Ravi Chaudhary, the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Installation, Energy, and Energy Installation and Environment. He is joined by his lovely spouse, Dr. Uma Chaudhary, who just earned her doctorate in speech-language pathology from Northwestern. Please give her a shout out. And they are joined by their daughter, Nina, who is an Air Force cadet at Georgia Institute of Technology. Go Yellow Jackets, right? Of course, she is following her father's legacy. We don't have Lieutenant General David Huntoon. He's probably still trying to find a parking space. He is my fellow. He is an infantryman, so I guess they have to look for that. Please don't repeat that when he shows up. Okay. We have Major General Roy McCarrig, U.S. Army Special Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Department of the Army. He's a local boy, Kalihi, right? Okay. He said the Shaka thing. We have Major General Kerry McKee, also a Hawaii boy, United States Air Force, retired. He is currently the director of the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, a most endearing agency that is still searching for thousands and thousands of remains, returning them to when they're found, of our prisoners of war missing in action to their loved ones. Rear Admiral Patrick Piercy, United States Navy. I almost said Army that much. Yeah. Yeah, so he went viral, so he's got a ponytail now and a beard and stuff like that. But he's a sailor through and through. Brigadier General Jimmy Callis, U.S. Air Force, retired by his daughter, JC. He is another C-17 pilot, so they have a two-man membership in that particular, two, right. I didn't see Mr. James Albino. Are you here? He's the director of the Center for Minority Veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Anselm Beach, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Equity and Inclusion. Where are you, Anselm? There you are. Way back when, I used to be as big as Anselm, but you know, after 34 years, you get what you get. Miss Susan Jen Davis, are you here, Susan? She stayed too. All right, well, we'll introduce her when she shows up. But last but not least, a shout out to the midshipmen for the U.S. Naval Academy. Please stand up. Come on, stand up, stand up. Our future leaders of America, and then we have one. He is in the Navy RTC at John H. Kennedy. Jian Lim, where are you, Jian? Yeah, there you go. He was actually, Jian was actually telling me that he's never going to go to West Point. That he just chose the U.S. Naval Academy, so we need to work on him, okay, for that. You can see that. I asked the midshipmen to engage leaders at their tables on how they're able to succeed. Ask your leaders in your table to succeed in their professions and how they are helping grow leaders of the future. I would like to briefly recount what this Military Leadership Appreciation event represents. Our nation's historical archives recorded Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders who have, but not just on the War of 1812, but since the Revolutionary War. And of course, during the Civil War, some 339, this came from the National Park Service, 339 Asian and Pacific Islanders who served with 237 in the Navy and 102 in the Army who fought both in the Union Army and the Confederacy. They came from 27 countries and Pacific Islands, but fought as non-citizens of America. World War II was a tipping point where thousands upon thousands of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders served in Europe and Pacific who were pressed into action to defend the United States. Congresswoman Dakota talked about the Japanese American thesis soldiers. It was 120,000 of them and their families were interned in the 11 camps across the country, questioned for their citizenship, and yet they were the most decorated soldiers that we have in this country. The Chinese Americans served only because President Roosevelt revoked the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. and they served in 1943. The Filipino Americans, of course, fought to defend the United States and the Philippines, and you know their history. America needed them to fight against America's enemies despite suffering racial intolerance, violence, and social injustice before they were even deployed to fight. And they also suffered that after they returned from war. Grand total of those cohorts, 350,000 of them, men and women alike, serve in uniform to display their patriotism and loyalty. The country that also denied them their rights. Nearly 59,000 of them were killed in action. Their service as the members of the greatest generation inspired and produced prominent and influential leaders in Congress and the military that followed. Congressman Norman Mineta, an Army officer, former mayor of San Jose, also a congressman from California who served as the Secretary of Transportation and Commerce, respectively. And you will probably remember him as a Secretary of Transportation when 9/11 hit, where he ordered all flights to be grounded and not to be flown for protecting our country. Daniel Inouye, an Army captain, Medal of Honor was the recipient, a senator from Hawaii. The United States Navy named a ship after him. The USS Daniel K. Inouye, DDG-118, a Navy Arleigh Burke Aegis guided missile destroyer. That's a mouthful. And it's home ported in Honolulu, of course. Eric Kijinzeki, we talked about him being the first Japanese American to be selected for his 4-star. We have 3 others, Admiral Harry Harris, also Asian American, Japanese descent, United States Navy retired, former commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and later became the U.S. ambassador to South Korea. General Michael Nakasone, U.S. Army retired, is a former commander of Cyber Command and director of National Security Agency, an agency that you don't often see on the newspapers, but then, of course, he is helping defend our country. Surprisingly, General John Campbell, another Japanese American, Asian American, of course, United States Army retired, and he commanded thousands of the joint and combined NATO forces in Afghanistan. With 1 3-star woman, Vice Admiral Raquel Bono, United States Navy retired, a surgeon, former director of Defense Service Agency, first Filipino American to reach 3 stars. And my friend, personal friend, Lieutenant General Ed Soriano, we were a captain way, way back in the 1980s when he and I were the only Asian American in a unit of about 20,000 troops, where he beat me out and he got his 3 stars as an immigrant. Both of us are immigrants. We also celebrate Major General Suzanne Vares-Lum, United States Army, retired, and she's the current president of East-West Center in Hawaii, focused on the Indo-Pacific strategy and affairs. And a great hero, Senator Tammy Duckworth, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, a wounded warrior and the first female double amputee who lost both legs. She suffered in combat in Iraq as a helicopter pilot. He is currently serving as the senator from Illinois. Although any HPI are represented but at about 5 to 6% of our total force, armed forces, that corresponds to our representation in population, we aim to continue our presence and visibility to hold the promise of the civic responsibilities and safeguarding America's principles and ideals. So, I saw somebody raise their hand, says, quit talking, Taguba. I see you're all hungry, so let's have the rest of our lunch, and then we'll complete it after lunch. Bon appetit. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Ravi Chaudhary, who is the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Installations, Energy and Environment, Department of the Air Force. Prior to this appointment, he served as Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Energy and as former Director of Advanced Programs and Innovation, Office of Commercial Space Transportation at the Federal Aviation Agency, Department of Transportation, and White House National Space Council initiatives. He graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1993 and served for 21 years after a distinguished career in command, flying, engineering, and senior staff assignments in the Air Force and Navy. As a C-17 pilot, he served in numerous combat missions in Afghanistan and Iraq as Director of Joint Personnel Recovery Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ravi I. Chattery.
I'm going to need to adjust the mic because Tony was just up here. All right. Well, hello everyone. How's it going today? So who's ready to work off that huge piece of steak that you just ate? Wow. So, konnichiwa, hafade, namaskar, and aloha. Happy AANHPI Heritage Month. Esther, where are you? Thank you for that incredible rendition of the national anthem. It was just heart-stopping. Yeah, come on, work off the steak. We got to work off the steak. We got to bring up the energy now. General Taguba, thank you for once again convening what is now an institution for both PPALM and APAICS. We can't thank you enough for what you've meant to PPALM, APAICS, fellow American vets, and the nation. Madeline, congrats last night on an incredible APAICS gala. 30th anniversary, that's a big deal. You are absolutely unflappable. And after, right. And after putting on an event like that, including the after party, we won't ask you if you went, but I can't fathom how you are not absolutely exhausted right now. My only explanation is that you possess superhuman powers. You are truly incredible. Thank you for having me here today. Rep. Dakuda, who we missed, I just wanted to say thank you to her for her inspirational and absolutely spot-on words. Thanks to her leadership, it's just been an honor to work with her, rest of the Armed Services Committees, to ensure our troops get the support and resources that are befitting of their dedicated service. Delegate Valderrama, welcome and thank you to everyone and everything you do in the great state of Maryland. Kumar Barve says, hello, he's a good friend, I know, and he's just thrilled that you're here today. To our General and Flag Officers, thank you for being here. General Seeley, General Huntoon, General McKeague, General McRae, Admiral Piercy, and of course, my old wingman, Brigadier General Canlis, bringing in Air Force Blue today. Thank you. Appreciate it. It takes 2 C-17 pilots to make a crew and get to your destination. So we'll see how we do the rest of this speech. Great to see you, Vegas. Just an honor. To all the men and women who serve, thank you for being here today. I'm going to echo the words of our Commander-in-Chief. You are the heart and soul of our nation. But I also want to take a moment and acknowledge any military spouses here today. If you're a military spouse, please stand. It is Military Spouses Appreciation Month. Thank you. Yes, you too, Uma, you're a military spouse, emeritus. On paper, they're listed as dependents. But I can't think, on this month of military spouse appreciation, I can't think of a more independent group of badasses in our nation. I'm serious about that. But ladies and gentlemen, I must take a moment, and I wish you'd join me. It is not often, and it's getting less and less often, that we have a World War II veteran with us in our presence. So please join me in rendering special honors to Petty Officer Ray Remigio Kapkar. Thank you, please. We stand for you, sir. We stand for you. Our greatest generation. Everything you meant to this nation, we stand on your shoulders, and we look to your devotion and duty as a guiding light to our service. We really do. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders have served, as you've heard, in nearly every major conflict since the founding of our nation, going all the way back to the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812. NHPIs have served during the Civil War. Over 13,000 Chinese Americans signed up to serve during World War II. Hazel Ying Lee broke gender and ethnic barriers as one of the first women of color to serve as a pilot during World War II. Arthur Chin, bet you never heard this one, was the first American ace of World War II. Of course, over 30,000 Nisei warriors enlisted and served with the 442 Regimental Combat Team during World War II, as did Filipino Americans, and the tradition of honor and service continues to this very day. And many of you in this room are testament to that service. Yet, I gotta ask a question. Where are we in the pages of our history books? And when I ask that question, I'm not being rhetorical. You see, I grew up in Minnesota. And in my community, apart from my grandfather's story, I had limited connection to the story of South Asians in our nation's military history. The libraries were filled with aircraft I dreamt of flying, and I stayed glued to them every day. But I didn't see myself in the faces on the pages. In fact, I was well into my Air Force career when I learned about Sergeant Sabu Dustiger. Who's heard of him? That's a few folks. That's good. Sabu was a prolific Hollywood actor who played in roles in one of the first productions of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book in the 1930s. He also played in The Thief of Baghdad. He also has his footprints and a star on Hollywood Boulevard. But after the war started, Sabu Dustiger, in a measure of devotion to his adopted nation, chose to serve in a time of war. He had every privilege of taking a quicker route. Every privilege. In fact, in Hollywood, they called it the Hollywood Navy, which was the Coast Guard in the LA area. I'm serious about that. Yes, you really have to look that up. But he chose something else. He chose to enlist in the U.S. Army Air Corps. And he also served as an air crew in the Pacific, right alongside the likes of Jimmy Stewart, Clark Gable, and many other actors and actresses. He flew numerous and dangerous strike missions. In one particular mission, in the B-24 Liberator, in which he served as a tail gunner, they lost half their formation. He served in the 307th Bomb Group, and for his heraldry, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Upon learning of this story and the strong connection to my own South Asian heritage, I was filled with just a deep sense of pride, but a little bit of sadness. How was this story kept hidden from me for so many years? After all, before I left for the Air Force Academy, Many in my community were asking me, why don't you just go be a doctor? Why don't you just go be an engineer or lawyer? That's what we do in our community. But luckily, my parents told me that they didn't come to this nation to do the status quo. They came here to follow their dreams, to test the unknown, and to do their best to make the American dream come true for their children. So had I known about Sabu, I'd have told all those folks off. I'd have told them about my connection, the courage that it would give me, and the strength to enter training with a lasting legacy, the very legacies we're talking about here today. And when I look among you, I see that this dream is still alive. It's alive and kicking, but that doesn't mean it's always easy. There will be naysayers that make you feel like the other, silence you, or worse yet, bring a racist trope into the mix. And sadly, much of the rise, as Rep. Takuda told us, the rise in Asian American hate that occurred during COVID even impacted our military community. But more emergent is something I want to talk to you about today. It's a subtle narrative in our military that there is an either-or, a false choice between diversity and the mission, between inclusion and readiness. So let's do some real talking here. You ready for some real talk? Camera's rolling? Good. We can never forget about Harry Liu, Raheel Siddiqui, military members whom we tragically lost to hateful anti-Asian bullying. And that's just not a decade ago. Just a couple of years ago, I heard of a South Asian who came to me and told me that in his squadron, he was referred to, because of the South Asian heritage, as 7-Eleven as his call sign. That's why I'm calling out to each of you as leaders in our community. If God forbid that occurs, especially for our most junior folks, I want you to be strong. Remember your heritage. That's what this month is about. I want you to do what the Nisei did. Go for broke. And remember that you carry the torch of generations that have gone before you. The heroism of Senator Inoue, the devotion of Norm Mineta, Young Ok Kim, Celestino Almeida, Bhagat Singh, astronaut Sunita Williams, Senator Tammy Duckworth, Representative Ted Lieu, General Shinseki, and thousands more. To those departing for training, take all of them to your training with you. To those deploying, bring them in here when you're serving on ships, bunkers, and aircraft all over the world. Keep them in your soul, as I have. And I guarantee you, you'll never walk alone. But most importantly, bring in your chain of command. Report it. Go for broke. That's what I did. And know that there's only one thing that will allow the darkness to fester in our lives and grow to the point of fracture in our democracy. That's when good people stand on the sidelines. So get in the fight. The fight for equity. The fight for our values. And remind all of those around you of the words inscribed on our Great Seal of the United States of America, E pluribus unum, that out of many we are one, You see, when all of our cultures are in the battle formation, all of our cultures, red, white, black, brown, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, all religions, turbans, tunics, what have you, have it all. It is a pinprick through the hearts of those that wish to divide us. It is a precision weapon that extremist ideologies find very, very difficult to circumvent. That's the unity of our nation. And if that doesn't work, call me. I'll be there for you. These folks will be there for you. And we'll intervene. It's not always the example of our power that leads nations and democracies through difficult times. It's the power of our example. Remember, it's not diversity or the mission, it's diversity for the mission. We're a better team. We're a better combat outfit. We are better mission executors when we have all of our cultures standing side by side, executing day in, day out. And if you've been there like I have, you know it's true. You know it's a fact. So don't let any naysayers tell you otherwise. And I'll give you an example. So I was flying on a crew on the way to Afghanistan and Iraq. And as most air crews do, you got to do a stop in Germany to tank up the jet. And then you also tank yourself up, too. So we went downtown, and we went to the cobblestones, and we did go to a local pub, and we're just sharing a brew. And on that crew, we had a really diverse group. We had all cultures represented. It was really cool. And so we're just kind of hanging around. Of course, because of our haircuts, people know we're GIs. And one individual, a couple of individuals came up to us. They were locals, and they said, you know, you guys GIs, you're like, wow, look how diverse you are. This is amazing. What do you do? And we said, we're all a crew. We execute a mission. And we fly together. And they looked at us with these strange eyes. They're like, wow, that's really, really weird, you know? I don't know, how do you even do that? We would assume that the aircraft would just crash. But that's when my crew interrupted them. Almost in unison. I'll never forget it. They all replied, that's what makes America so strong. Think about that. You see, in the end, these stories aren't entirely about the past. They're about the future. The stories are about me, and they're about you. And the one thing I'm thankful for is that I have each of you as my battle buddy on this journey. And so as I look at young Cadet Chaudhary there, all fired up and ready in her battle gear, ready to go do some training, I want you to know that we're going to commit to making sure that your Air Force, your legacy, your history will not require you to worry about whether you're alone or not. You'll always have a place and a history to look back on because of the stories that we tell, publish, and recognize today. We do it all for our next generation, our next greatest generation, to give them a fulsome understanding of our heritage, values, and heroes, to give them the strength as they serve. And as your wings go stronger every single day, know that mom and dad will be there to support you. But you've got thousands that are there that have blazed a trail and have gone before you to turn your feathers into wings. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and may God continue to bless our troops.
Wasn't that great? Excuse me, let me lower the podium. All right, who took my stool? All right, anyway, thanks again, Mr. Secretary, inspiring words. And like you said, we're with you, we're all with you, and we're all with us. So before I introduce our next speaker, we would like to show a short video on the theme, Why We Serve, featuring the next generation of young Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders serving in our armed forces. Please play the video. As you know, our country is going through a struggle of recruiting in our armed forces, and we're targeting the newest generation, Gen Z, 17 to 24-year-old, to come serve with us like we serve our country. And I want to give a shout out to our producer for that video, Miss Lita Peterson up here. She is in the military, but she doesn't know that yet. She has been with us for the longest time. Okay. Last year, we added a millennial leader to the program with Lieutenant Colonel Renee Lee, District of Columbia Air National Guard, as a guest speaker. So we continue this tradition of having a millennial, maybe sometime next time, a Gen Z, share their thoughts on why they serve to maintain the legacy of past generations of service in uniform. Major J.U. is an infantry officer, a graduate of the United States Military Academy, class of 2011, just a short time ago. He received a Bachelor's of Science degree in physics and a Master's of Public Administration from Columbia University. And he also served as an American politics instructor at West Point. During his combat deployment to Afghanistan, he served as a commander of an infantry striker company, a powerful mounted armored unit from an infantry company of about 120 soldiers. He is currently serving as logistics officer and joint planner at the Joint Enabling Capabilities Command in Norfolk, Virginia. Then prior to his assignment, he served as operations officer at the 2nd Logistics Capable Battalion at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. His most recent accomplishment is the successful completion of his doctoral studies in public policy and public administration at George Washington University. He will be conferred his doctor's hooding ceremony on Thursday, tomorrow, at George Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Major and soon-to-be Dr. J.U., Ph.D.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, let me move this. Sorry. It was by accident, I promise. What an honor to be able to speak after all of our illustrious speakers who've provided so much great perspectives. And Dr. Chartery, like, you pumped me up. Like, holy crap, that was great. And I was just whispering to my wife, I don't know how I'm gonna follow that. But I will attempt to do my best. So, why we serve? Ladies and gentlemen, for nearly 250 years, the United States has stood as the beacon of hope, strength, and freedom, overcoming numerous conflicts. As a nation, we thrived as a superpower, matching our adversaries during the Cold War. Yet, now we find ourselves at a crossroads, entering a new era where our traditional advantages in economics, military, and technology are being challenged. Today, we face a stark reality, a future conflict shaped by emerging technologies and the need for talented individuals committed to democracy. Our adversaries are not just competing with us. They aim to surpass us. Our democracy is at stake, and we find ourselves in this high-stakes poker game where everything is in the line. For the first time in over a century, the United States stands on the brink of being outpaced by our adversaries. In the Indo-Pacific region alone, our adversaries are producing military equipment at 12 times greater capacity and speed than we are, which also boasts larger fleets of warships and more arms than the United States. The alarming shift threatens not just our position on the global stage, but the security and freedom that has been the hallmark of this country. Now, the geopolitical stage has been set. So let's get ready and prepare. But a grave challenge looms before us. Where are the soldiers and sailors for this fight? We're grappling with a profound recruitment and retention crisis in the United States military. And alarmingly, there are not enough volunteers willing to step forward and commit to defend our nation. Today, the military is struggling to resonate as a viable path for young Americans. High-paying careers and roles perceived as more prestigious, as indicated by TikTok, Instagram, and BeReal, are drawing potential recruits away. I, for one, fall into this category where the allure of free college and a secure job were my primary reasons to join initially. However, there's a saying, you might join the military for the wrong reasons, but you wind up staying for the right ones. But even today, that's still not quite enough to entice our young men and women to volunteer. Military service, which was once viewed as a noble and honorable cause, is now under scrutiny as an unworthy return on investment. I get it. The high-paying salaries of tech fields or jobs like investment banking is very enticing. I get it. I mean, who wouldn't want to work on a beanbag chair all day, drinking their gluten-free caramel macchiatos, right? sign me up. I get it. However, I think we as a society are doing a disservice by over-glorifying the monetary aspects. If we look at the time value of money or the economic value proposition or projection of unquantifiable variables, such as emotional intelligence, grit, camaraderie, leadership, which the military is a hotbed for, how does that affect the lifetime success of an individual? How about the visceral transformation that occurs when you operate by making decisions on life and death, and no offense to anyone else, but against your peers who are penny pinching for profits? And how about that 21-year-old second lieutenant that's told that he or she must lead a platoon, and their platoon sergeant is a 15-year-old veteran with multiple combat deployments? I would argue, if you could gain the respect of that crusty, hardened E7, the corporate boardroom seems pretty easy to me. We understand that our nation requests our service members a lot. It's not easy, and quite frankly, it is scary. It requires our young leaders to endure multiple deployments, PCS moves, time away, harsh, grueling training, and where our mistakes are in the form of body bags of our teammates and our subordinates, or even the phone calls that you have to make to the heartbroken mothers that their sons and daughters are not coming back home. So why would or should anyone serve amidst all of what I've just went through? Well, we serve because of a deep-seated calling to give back to a nation that's given us so much. Whether motivated by a desire for opportunities, the freedom of expression, or sheer patriotism, at the core of our service is about contributing more than what we take. It's about ensuring a brighter future for ourselves, our families, and those behind us. It's about protecting and advancing the country that has nurtured our dreams and aspirations that is only enabled by the democracy and freedom under our Constitution. We have everything to lose. And the only way we can endure is by the common agreements of the idea of we, the people. Despite what's on the line, the proud declaration of what once used to be why we serve with an exclamation mark has faded. It has now been replaced by a hesitant and reflective, why do we serve? A question mark weighing heavily on the future of our armed forces. This crisis is not just about numbers. It's about our fractured American spirit, where it used to be, despite our differences, the concept of duty, honor, and country always brought us together. If we cannot inspire the next generation to uphold this mantle, who will stand guard over the freedoms we hold dear? The call to serve is now more urgent than ever. This is a declaration, a call for action to everyone to rekindle the spirit of service and ensure our military remains strong and prepared. The stakes cannot be higher. This is also a call to arms to this generation, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and the next. You are the future leaders of America. So ask, if not you, then who? As we gather here today, please look around, particularly at our young men and women who have pledged to defend our nation next. In their eyes, you'll find hope and resolve. And that is the reason why the United States will endure. However, they can't do it alone. Everyone in this room, every citizen, has a role in bolstering our forces through support and advocacy to resolve the recruitment and retention issue. This speech isn't about why I serve or why you serve. It's about why we all must serve. Behind me is the flag under we gather, a symbol of our freedom and democracy. That flag and everything it stands for is why we serve. Thank you.
Okay, so far we've collected 4 or 5 PhDs in here. Both Dr. Chaudhary and Dr. Chaudhary. We've got almost he's now a doctor too, Dr. J.U. We got Dr. Gina Cho. Where are you, Gina Cho? Are there any medical doctors in here? You say? Okay. So we're delighted to have such a marvelous group. I want to acknowledge a couple of more distinguished guests. Dr. Gina Cho, of course, PhD. She's the executive officer to the chief of the National Guard Bureau, and she achieved her PhD as a captain doing research on cross-cultural leadership way back when. It's still publicly available today. We got Colonel Peter Moon, former commander of the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, now assigned to the office of the Chief of Staff of Public Affairs. He's the Chief of Staff of the Public Affairs Office. Stand up, Peter. Okay, and not to be outdone, Colonel John Connor, U.S. Air Force, I almost said Army Air Force, but U.S. Air Force Senior Military Assistant to Dr. Chaudhary. So we're now nearing our program, and let me turn it back to Madeline.
We must continue to bring to life our heroes and our leaders who made it possible for all of us to strive and continue to represent and succeed in America. In that, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors of RTX, Disney, and NEA, and also please thank the restaurant staff of the building here for all of their service in providing lunch and being able to have this wonderful event. And I'd also like to thank Lita and Victoria for all of their dedication and service in putting together the event itself. On behalf of APAICS, I'd like to thank General Taguba and all of his leadership of PPALM and our continued partnership, and acknowledge the APAICS team for all of their hard work and dedication, and including acknowledging all of the APAICS board members, if they could also raise their hands, as well as any advisory council members. General Taguba.
Again, I also want to thank our great partner here, Madeline. She's a go-getter, and she should be wearing the rank of a general officer sometimes, outranking me, but that's okay. On behalf of all of us here, we especially thank you. And before I do that, I want to shout out to Ben de Guzman, representing the mayor of Washington, D.C. He's over there hiding. Thank you, everyone, for today's program, and without whom this event would not have been possible for all those who participated. We will have a photo op near the stage, those who are willing to have their smiles recorded. So I hope you have a good lunch, a great lunch, and we hope to see you again next year, right? Hua hua? That's Army, by the way. Okay. All right. Thanks again. Be safe.